This is the Dover Download Podcast. My name is Christopher Parker, and for the past 25 years, I've had the pleasure of working with, learning from, and talking to a variety of volunteer, staff, and community members. This podcast explores conversations, activities, and a variety of policies and programs which exist here in Dover to improve the community in one way or another. With summer upon us, it is construction season. As we move through June into July and August, wanted to sit down with Community Services Director John Storr to talk about what the public can expect from construction activity and what we can think about for upcoming projects maybe in the fall as we look towards the Henry Law Payne Street reconstruction or Court and Union. So I welcome John Storr. How are you this morning?
Doing well. Thanks for having me. Happy to be with you.
We talked about before, your hands are in so many of our projects, whether directly because you are a go-getter and a get stuff done type of person, or because inevitably it's either something that engineering is working on or Eric Sanderson, our project manager, is working on that you indirectly have to support. But there's a lot going on a daily basis. We are going to talk less about some of the water main breaks and things of that nature, but more on the bigger projects. And the one I want to start with is something that we're sort of began maybe in April, which is a replacement of streetlights downtown. We had a powwow in the winter about sort of tackling that, and you and Bill Belanger really just said, okay, roll up our sleeves and let's do this. So can you walk the listener through what that project started as and where it's going?
Yeah, no, great question, Chris, because I think that'll have a high visibility for people traveling through the downtown, and hopefully they've noticed. I try to get to your question in detail, but we did a little pilot test or a pilot study, if you will, near the intersection on Central, near the intersection of 3rd and Broadway. We call it Upper Square, Franklin Square. People may see some fresh loam that has gone down, but hopefully they notice the nice new poles and the nice new clear globes. What we were trying to evaluate is whether we can salvage a lot of the old underground infrastructure, the electrical conduit and the wires. And we found that a lot of the conduit is still intact, but we have to retrofit a lot of the electrical wiring. So some people may say, well, why can't the lights go faster? We just did a pilot test on that piece of Upper Square. We got 5 or 6 in. We have 22 more lights on order. And our next focus is going to be on Central from the railroad tracks, progressing southerly on the easterly side towards Broadway. We hope to get down to Chapel Street. And on the westerly side, we hope to get down to 2nd Street, where we may stop short on 2nd because there's also some pending work for some pedestrian bump outs and some other things. But really want to try to make a focal point of this. The one thing in our world, everything has long lead times. So although we've ordered the lights, we're expecting it could be 8, 10, 12 weeks, something of that magnitude. But we're hoping to be back underway July, August, getting some more of the lights in. So the hope is by fall, people will see much improved, nicer lighting, more effective lighting, more efficient lighting, and just, nice cleanup of that. And then we also, just to get a plug in, we also hope to turn and go down the Joe Parks walkway to help better illuminate that. In Joe Parks, we're hoping to salvage some of the old light bases. But just to clarify, there's going to be, like making an omelet, you got to break a few eggs. As we go through the downtown, we're going to have to rip out some sidewalk panels, splice in some conduit. So there's going to be periodic areas of construction that people are going to have to dodge, and there'll be some inconvenience. But by the end of the summer, we hope to have it wrapped up, and I think people are really going to appreciate the new aesthetic.
So that ties into a longer-term project you've been working on with the Conservation Commission of replacing street trees in the downtown as well. And one of the things that I want to highlight, as you've already sort of leapt into what my next one was going to be, which is the crossings at 1st, 2nd, and Waldron. But one of the things that I think is important, we sat down in my time at least 5 times to look at the downtown. One-way, two-way studies, sidewalk studies, island studies. And what I really appreciate about your perspective is let's bite off what we can actually just get done and not hurt the long-term vision. But you're saying, and I'm paraphrasing for you, we can replace the street trees. We don't need to wait until 2028 when we redo the larger road network, or in this case, the lights. There's nothing to say if the lights are approximately where they're going to be. Why are we waiting to do the bigger project? Let's get in there with the funds we have on hand and replace those. So I think that sort of mindset of iterative improvements, you're right. One day in the fall, people are going to look back and go, wow, there's huge improvement because I can actually see where I'm walking at night.
Yeah, I think it's a good approach. I think we have to not be afraid to take some small steps while we're waiting for a larger project to come forward. We certainly don't want to waste money in the short term, but I think to the visual aesthetic, 2 points on the bump outs, if I can not lose sight of that. But on the street trees, you mentioned that, and that's another thing that I think we've purchased 15 new street trees. And to try to save money for the tax dollars, we're going to try to excavate out the old, we call them the tree pits. You'll see the bogs. So we'll have to pull out the old stump. We're going to do maybe 5 at a time over the course of the summer. And then we have hired a supply. I think this year we're working with Studley's out of Rochester. So they will come in and plant the tree and be responsible for the care and the watering. So there may be time of year where they don't want to put the trees in.
Yep.
But our goal is to phase in a minimum of 15 new trees. And we have heard criticism, why are we trying to maintain the old ash trees? They're in disrepair. And I said, I know. I kind of say it's like taking a palliative approach, a palliative healthcare. We're trying to extend the life of some of those, because if we cut all the ash trees right now, it would really leave the downtown void of, it would be a big aesthetic art. If we have 4 ashes in a row, we're going to try to take every other one and phase in 2 new ones and keep cycling those. So a minimum of 15 trees are coming. But you're right. I think one thing that we think will have some improvement visually as an aesthetic, but also for the safety of pedestrians, is looking at pedestrian crosswalks down by Waldron Court, by the old Harvey's Bakery at First Street. And then we're looking to make a more significant improvement up at Second Street. So we'll have, for people that may not be familiar what we're talking about with Main Street wide with parking, curb line to curb line, we're going to have bump outs to neck down the path that the pedestrians have to cross. We can put more signage up. We may have flashing beacons, something to draw attention to the crosswalk to make it inherently safer. So we're working with staff in your office, Deputy City Manager, on community development block grant funding. So there's some timeframes with that, but we hope to be underway by the end of this year to have some of those in. And if they don't happen this fall for some reason, we will get right on it next spring. But it is coming, and I think people will really welcome that.
One of the things that jumped out to me, particularly at Second Street, I've walked downtown, I can't even count how many times over the past 40 years, and never really picked up on the fact that when you're on the curb at Second Street, on Central, at the curb, looking to cross over to Franklin Plaza, you are not visually seen by the south driving vehicle until you're essentially in the middle of the crosswalk. Yeah. The way the curve of the roadway and the parking in front of the Morrill block, that visual impact is not there. So having those bump outs, really bringing the pedestrian closer to that point of contact in a safe manner, I think will be a huge improvement from a transportation standpoint and from a pedestrian safety standpoint.
No, absolutely agree with you. It is, the geometry is what it is out there in terms of the way the Main Street traffic can loop and come back south on Central, and across the way you have Second Street. So if you're traveling south on Central, you're very astute with your observation. People have to walk off the curb, walk 10, 12 feet out into where parking would be allowed to try to see if any cars are coming. So the bump out's going to put you right there, and we'll have some type of refuge, either a signboard or a flashing beacon, something that, drivers will be able to see, and it'll definitely bring, a clearer visible impact for the pedestrians to cross. Drivers will be able to see them much more clearly.
So one of the other improvements as we continue down Central, we've gotten complaints for at least 10 years, maybe longer, that once you cross the Central Avenue Bridge, you don't have pedestrian level lighting. It's much more the old Cobra heads. And we haven't been able to do holiday lighting or more ornamental lighting. And that really comes back to the capacity of the electric system, right?
Yeah, it's a combination there. The city, for the listener, the city maintains what I call, they look like the cast iron, the black with the ornamental globe. Those are city maintenance. The tall aluminum poles, and what we say the Cobra head is where it extends out and the light shines down. Those are maintained by Eversource. So we've had some problems with the underground wiring where the conduit has been severed and the wiring has been severed, and Eversource has been unwilling to dig everything up. So we're going to south of the bridge, as you noted. I'm not sure we're going to make it by this fall. We're going to be focusing north of the bridge, but we do hope to include that to get ornamental lighting, better illumination on that piece that would extend southerly from the bridge, as you noted.
Yeah, in chatting with Ken Mavergeorge, the city engineer, he said that we need to make some improvements at Washington and Henry Law as part of the Henry Law project in order to feed north to the bridge and make a clean cut, because as you've said, there's some of that conduit is in disrepair. I think the message on all of these projects is we've heard the concerns raised by a variety of stakeholders, and we're trying to do what iterative approach we can to make the improvements. And really kudos to Bill Belanger for sticking with the project and saying, just let me do a pilot. Let me see what's actually out there. And then, as his nickname is Bull, he'll just China shop it all the way down to the extent that you will pay for it.
Now, it's good to have a guy like Bill on board. I mean, he'd been with the city 40 years, has a get-it-done construction mindset. So you present Bill with a challenge or a construction issue, he's going to get, boots on the ground and crank it right out. So we're fortunate to have him. We have him on a part-time basis, but I say we pay him part-time, but we get full-time work out of him.
Yeah. So moving out of the downtown, what are some other projects that the listener can look forward to?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, just to go off on a slight tangent, there are so many projects that people are not going to see. I know you didn't really want to focus on water and sewer, but we have a state-of-the-art PFAS plant that came online. On the sewer side, we're doing a $7 million upgrade to our wastewater plant to try to enhance the treatment effectiveness. And then to get all the wastewater conveyed from our homes and our businesses, we're wrapping up a $9 million pump station improvement down on River Street. But jumping over to the water side, we're always going to be looking for additional source exploration. So we have some work planned, working with some specialists, searching in both bedrock deposits, in fractures, and high-yield aquifer, sand and gravel. But I think for the general traveling public, right now our Garrison Hill tank is undergoing a full renovation. So there's a 4 million gallon reservoir up there that we're completely overhauling. The next thing we need to do is work on our piping. We have piping that dates back. It predates 1888. We like to say that our piping goes back to 1888, but 1888 is when the city of Dover acquired the assets of 3 separate private water companies. So we believe we've got pipe that pre-exists 1888. So we've got a priority project. If people have driven Broadway and encountered water main breaks out there, we've got a project that contractors lined up, should be starting in a couple of weeks. We're going to come down cross country off the backside of Garrison Hill down to Oak Street. And then we're going to go, I think it's Hillside that tucks up in. We've got to extend on Oak out to Broadway. Then we're going to turn and come down Broadway. And we know the pavement is rough on Broadway due to a prior break. We want to get this project wrapped up in the fall and get the road paved. And then another project that we hope to queue up, we have some congressional directed spending on. We'd like to go from one water main project to another. We don't want to have multiple ones, given the traffic snarls. But as Oak and Broadway wraps up, we'd like to get, be a key project that will probably be underway if things go well next year. We'll be coming down Central from Abbey Sawyer all the way down to the railroad tracks. And that's going to replace a old 1888 or earlier transmission line that's really critical to us. So that'll be a big one that's on the horizon coming down.
I do want to interject for a second. You mentioned Hillside. That's Hillside Drive in Rollinsford.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Hillside Drive in Dover is in a different location. It's on
Oh,
Oak
thank
Street,
you, Chris. Yeah.
But you're correct. That's the name of the road, and it does impact the overall flow on Oak Street.
Yeah, so I'm glad you clarified that, because we're going to be, the water main will be coming down Garrison Hill to the intersection there as Hillside comes down from Rollinsford and extends onto Oak. That's where the impact point will start for the traveling public. And then we've got to progress to Broadway, and then from Broadway, we're going to go down to Florence. So they'll see activity. I believe we've held off till after June 6th to accommodate the Soapbox Derby folks. So right after the 6th, I saw the contractor is SUR Construction out of Rochester. Very happy to have them. They've been out there doing pre-construction videos, laying things out. So they'll be ready to hit the ground running the first week of June.
Speaking of SUR, we just awarded them a contract to do the Union and Court Street reconstruction as well. That's a project that I think is about 10 years in the making. Looking at the complexity of that project and there's a lot going on there. It's a complete street project in the sense that both we're creating better pedestrian, bike, and roadway conditions, but also we're replacing water, sewer, or amending. I guess we've already replaced in some ways the water and sewer.
Well, it will have water and sewer components, but you're right. I'm glad you brought that up as a focal point. That's one of the big projects that we will be embarking on. Yes, SUR construction was the low bidder. To give people an idea, the order of magnitude, it's up around $10 million for a full reconstruction. And kind of building off a project that is wrapping up, we have the Fifth and Grove area that is wrapping up. And I know the residents out there probably have construction fatigue, but we are getting close to the finish line. If we can get some green grass going and get the crews out of there, we've got some young trees, the street lights are in, we'll get everything striped. We're going to take that kind of holistic approach to the reconstructing the neighborhood over to Court and Union. And just a couple of the key features, going from Central Ave, we will go all the way out to Hubbard Road. So we'll finally have connectivity with a continuous sidewalk section, and then we'll be adding streetlights. We do have to take down a few trees, but we'll be replanting trees as we go. But you hit it correctly. We do have a little bit of sewer work to do and some water main, and then improve the drainage, because we know there's some flat areas where residents have experienced some drainage issues. So there'll be enclosed drainage. So it will be a complete street from that aspect, and that should be underway. That's going to be a big project.
Yeah.
So if we break ground this summer, it's going to definitely carry through all of next year, and we'll be curious if they can wrap up by the fall of 26 or not. It's a pretty big project.
One component of that I'm looking to see how it turns out is cleaning up the intersection of Back and Court Street right before Middle, and right before Court becomes Middle. There's a sort of Y intersection around a monument, and my understanding is that's going to be teed off, so it's a little bit clearer where Middle Road, how you use Back Road.
Yes, the intent, and I wish I could say I have the design laid out fresh in my mind, but we had talked about that. I believe the intent is to square that off, to kind of almost directly oppose where we have the entrance into our facilities and grounds and cemetery facility,
right.
So that it kind of queues up almost as a cross. And we think that'll improve safety. A lot of people don't yield coming through there, and there's some confusion, but the idea is to square that off, and I think it'll be much improved.
With that change and with the sidewalks, it should be a huge improvement for the pedestrians. We know that's a big area for people to walk and get around, so that those changes should be a big safety improvement.
And I know some people, we had multiple neighborhood meetings, and people always want a lot of amenities, and I wish we could accommodate, but the project is approaching $10 million in aggregate, and we could only keep a sidewalk on one side. There had been requests on both sides.
As we wrap up, there's a lot going on. One that I want to talk about that is somewhat delayed, but it's not because of our own fault. It's because of the pressures that are on our design engineers that we've outsourced to, and some right-of-way questions that the state raised, but that's the Silver Street to Stark Avenue reconstruction of Central Avenue. Another project we got federal funding to help us do, maybe not a half, but just shy of a half of that total cost of that project is through federal aid. But that project, a complete street project as well, using Silver Street as sort of the model of how to create a gateway into the community. We hope to see some movement on that project a year from now, really. As we have to tighten up some right-of-way questions.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's the pros and the cons of the happy and the sadness of accepting the large grants, is that with the grants come provisions to make sure we're protecting people's rights, the tax dollars are being used appropriately. So there is a pretty extensive land process. Some of the city roads date back to the King's Land Grant, so we have to go back and research land ownership, make sure that we have a legal right of access. If for some reason we don't, we have to negotiate access easements and right of access agreements. So we're going to be scheduling some outreach and neighborhood meetings and try to meet with the landowners and explain what's going on. I try to fast forward to what it may look like at the end. And I don't want to portray it's going to look like Silver Street on steroids, because Silver Street kind of goes out. Silver Street's a beautiful gateway to drive. And nice lights, nice trees, nice old houses. Have to recognize that Central's got a little bit more of a commercial feel there with the plaza, but you're going to have the amenities. You're going to have the nice sidewalks, the curb line, the street lights, everything reconfigured. And for me as an engineer, we'll take care of all the buried stuff. People may not recall, but every time I drive south on Central and I approach the Plaza Cleaners, I drove over a roadway patch that triggered this project with failed stormwater drainage. We had SUR come in and do an emergency repair. So knowing the intricacies of our infrastructure, it was the failed drainage that is finally driving this big gateway project that once it's done, I think the community is going to be very proud of it. We'll have a beautiful gateway coming in off the exit 7 side, coming south, coming in from the south. It's really going to be a nice amenity for the city. But with the federal dollars, we've got a lot of planning, a lot of land coordination. I hope we will be out to bid the fall of 26. Whether any ground is broken in 26 or not, I think is still up in the air. But by 27, the things should be well underway. Any
last projects you think are worth bringing up and mentioning?
Well, I think you probably have had separate podcasts about the waterfront. Absolutely. And the one thing that we're doing, we have the reconstruction of Henry Law from Central down to Payne Street and then Payne Street itself. We're going to be going out to bid this fall. We have promised Margaret Joyce at the Chamber of Commerce that there will be no impacts to Henry Law for Apple Harvest Fest for this fall, but we hope to be under construction immediately after Apple Harvest. And while people may focus on the impacts to Henry Law, we're doing a major stormwater treatment, a retention pond within Henry Law Park proper. And so we got grant funding for that. We're also going to be working on stabilizing the retaining wall and the shore wall along the river. And then what people will appreciate, you'll have a brand new Henry Law with new sidewalks, new lighting and everything. So there's a lot going on. It's a very exciting time for the city. And it's nice to be part of it.
Absolutely. And I think that tie back between finishing the Henry Law Reconstruction Project, which we did the outer legs of almost 20 years ago. And then also as part of this project, putting underground electric and bringing all the overhead on Henry Law and Payne Street underground so it matches what's on the waterfront where we want to be on Washington with Central and Maine. So it really is part of a larger project, and it's a good piece of that.
I'm glad you mentioned that people don't appreciate that. I'm a huge fan of trying to get the utilities underground, even thought about it for my own house for the aesthetic, but people don't appreciate its order of magnitude. It's in the millions of dollars to do so as opposed to running overhead. But the city has made strategic decisions in certain areas. That's where I'm really excited. I think Henry Law is going to look so nice when it's all done. And I think people are really going to appreciate that.
I agree. I appreciate you coming in, taking some time today to walk through these projects with us. Hope you have a great day.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
We are ready to hear what happened in the month of May. Aaron Basagio from the Planning Department and Brian Early from Media Services are going to walk us through all the activity. Aaron, why don't you start us off by talking about some of the non-planning board activities, because I know there's a couple of planning board things that'll take a little bit more time, so we'll focus on those at the end.
Start with the Conservation Commission met this month. They had a couple CUPs that they were reviewing for a residential project at 1 Cold Springs. They're related to impacts because of steep slopes on the property, as well as the property being located in the secondary groundwater protection district. Both of those CUPs were endorsed by the Conservation Commission, and they'll go on to Planning Board. And both of those items, the Planning Board heard at their second meeting of the month. The TDR subcommittee met for their second meeting. They're continuing their conversations about the ordinance, reviewing it, both the history and kind of some ideas for moving forward for the ordinance. There's a lot more conversations to come with that subcommittee, so we'll be sharing it as it happens. The Arts Commission met. They've got a couple big projects they're working on. They just reinstalled the Blue Crab down near the Children's Museum. That was kind of a long-term project they were working on with Dover High School and getting it fixed up and back installed. And
big kudos to Community Services, by the way, for their efforts to transport and coordinate the welding, the priming, the buffing, the painting, all of those sorts of things in support of the Arts Commission's mission for the crab.
It was a huge effort by Community Services, and everyone should go check it out. It's very shiny.
Yes.
And the Arts Commission is also nearing their funding goal for a sculpture off of Central Ave, kind of heading down into Joe Park's garden, which we've talked about in the past.
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll be announcing some next steps shortly. And the Trail Committee also met. They also have a couple things that they've been working on. In May, it was Bike to Work Month. And alongside Seacoast area bicycle riders, they hosted a Bike to Work event in May. And that was kind of started at the trailhead at the Transportation Center. So they were offering coffee and snacks and just kind of talking about biking to work and the trail. One other event that the Community Trail Committee is working on is a Chalk Fest in June 8th. That's going to be taking place on the Fisher Street stretch of the trail. Participants get their own square to create a chalk creation, and there's going to be snacks, drinks, and awards. We'll have judges to judge the chalk art, and there'll be prizes.
Sounds good. Brian, what can you tell us about the City Council in the month of May?
Thanks, Chris. A significant focus of the City Council in May was the proposed Dover High School athletic project. The Joint Building Committee created for the project held a joint workshop with the school board and the City Council on May 21st to review the JBC's report and recommendations for the project. The JBC, as you recall, has been charged with researching and recommending improvements to the Dover High School's Dunaway Field, including to the bleachers, track, the lights, and outdoor storage. In the process of its review, the JBC found an opportunity to create a new multi-purpose athletic field by adjusting the alignment of Dunaway Field and changing the location of the baseball diamond of the adjacent field. They recommend completing both aspects, which would also include adding artificial turf fields and lights for a cost of $20 million. They also presented options for just Dunaway Field for $11.6 million. At its May 28th meeting, the City Council began the funding process for the field renovation by introducing the resolutions. A public hearing will be held on June 11th, with a vote occurring on June 25th. The resolution is for the $20 million option, but the City Council can reduce the amount. The school board will meet to discuss the field proposal. The school board is expected to provide their recommendation to the City Council before the June 25th vote. The City Council also approved an updated consolidated plan for the city's Community Development Block Grant Program, as well as a fiscal year 26 action plan. The action plan includes funding for pedestrian and accessibility improvements on Central Ave downtown that may begin later this year. Earlier this month, the City Council authorized a few public art projects, including a community art wall, art installations at traffic control boxes, and one at the Joe B. Parks Riverwalk Gardens. The City Council also authorized a construction contract for the Court and Union reconstruction project that has been in the works for a number of years. That project is expected to begin this summer and take 2 construction seasons to complete. And that's all I have for the City Council. Chris?
All great stuff. Thanks for that update. Aaron, why don't you round us out by walking us through the zoning board and the planning board activities?
Sure. The zoning board met. They granted a variance providing relief. This was related to a commercial facility and the solar green roof requirements. They also granted a variance to allow a slightly shorter frontage related to a subdivision proposal at 46 Rutland Street. They did grant that variance, so now that subdivision request will need to go to planning board. And finally, there was at a previous zoning board meeting, they granted a rehearing request for a residential project at 9 Maple Street. That rehearing did take place, but it resulted in actually 2 tie votes. So the zoning board tabled the item till the next meeting.
That tie vote scenario, that's a good opportunity to educate the public. One thing that's unique about the zoning board is it's a 5-member board, regular member, and then there are alternates. The statutes allow that if there are less than 5 members, the applicant can decide whether to be heard that night or not because they need 3 for an approval. So in this case, there were 4 members, correct?
Correct.
So the applicant could have tabled at the onset. They could have asked to be continued. Instead, they chose to go forward. And so when it results in a tie like that, the board then has the opportunity, as it did, to table to a meeting when they have 5 members so that a decision can be told. Because unlike in other scenarios where a tie wins or loses, here a tie is truly a tie and no decision has been made. So in this case, the zoning board recognized that and said, we will table, and hopefully at our June meeting, we'll have 5 members at the very least, and we can have a decision for this.
That's correct. And at this point, it does sound like they'll have at least 5 members at the June meeting, so that item will be reheard and hopefully no more ties. At the first planning board meeting of the month, the board approved 2 excavation permits in the city of Dover. This occurs every other year for 2 excavation sites in Dover. The board approved a lot line adjustment. That was for a property that it was kind of interesting. It straddled Dover and Madbury. So there were actually a similar lot line adjustment being applied in Madbury for the same project. The board also approved a TDR request. This is for a residential proposal at 141 6th Street. The request was for 8 additional units and for 20 units total. That would be 10 duplexes on site. And again, with TDR requests, that's the board approving up to that number.
Right.
So the project would still need to come back through the technical review committee and planning board for review, potentially a different design, potentially a different unit count, but they can only design up to that unit count. And finally, the board granted a CUP, an open space subdivision at 210 Tolan. The project proposed a 5-lot subdivision. 2 of those lots will be conserved. And one of the lots is going to be developed as a 29-unit open space subdivision that connects to Emerald Lane.
So a lot of activity at the first meeting of the month. How about the second meeting of the month?
For the second planning board meeting of the month, it looked like a long agenda, but it was actually only 2 projects. One was a number of applications related to a residential proposal at 1 Cold Springs. There were 3 conditional use permits, a site plan, and a TDR request as part of the project. All 5 related applications were approved. That proposal is for 8 total single-family homes. 1 is an existing home that's on site currently. So there would be 7 new homes at the site. This is actually an extension of the Sophie Banner development in the area. The other project on the agenda was actually a project that was coming back to the board at 566 6th Street. This was a TDR subdivision that previously was heard in fall of 24 by the board. The board denied it at that point. It was a proposal for a total of 5 housing units. That's 1 existing unit on site and 4 new housing units. The applicant appealed to the New Hampshire Housing Appeals Board, and the appeals board remanded that decision back to planning board, meaning planning board was to reconsider the applications related to that project. Coming back to the planning board, again at this meeting, the planning board was considering both the minor subdivision for that project as well as the request for TDR, which was the 4 new units. The planning board at this meeting approved both applications, creating 3 lots at the site and approving up to that number of units, 5 total units. So again, the planning board approved the 2 related applications for that project. There were also a number of zoning amendments that were heard by the board. These were proposed by planning staff after recommendations from the board and residents. These were in addition to a few other recommendations that were made at a previous meeting. So those will now be publicly posted and considered by the board at a future meeting. And that's all I got.
As we wrap up this month, I'll note that the Waterfront Committee did not meet in May. It elected to combine the May and June meetings, so May 20th and June 17th, to a June 3rd meeting. At that meeting, they will be discussing with the developer some proposed changes that the developer would like to bring forward to the planning board for the courtyard between building C and D and the look and feel of building F. The Parking Commission did meet in May. Typically, they meet the same day, and they agreed to support requests made by the Waterfront Committee at its April meeting to bring the managed parking system across the Macon Bridge so that all areas of downtown are governed by the same parking management system. That will go to the City Council in June for its endorsement. A lot of things always happen here in the city of Dover, and we appreciate the listener tuning in to find out what occurred. We'll be back with you in June. Thanks for listening to the Dover Download this week. If you like what you heard, subscribe through your favorite podcast aggregator. And if you have something you want to hear a topic on, let us know. Finally, this is just one of the many ways we share information about the city of Dover. You can subscribe to the Dover Downloads email newsletter every week or other newsletters that we have by going to the City of Dover homepage, www.dover.nh.gov. Have a great week.